Hi guys, welcome to my home. My name is Melissa with Gillian Homestead, and today I was going to do a talk on gardening and seeds. I am getting really the itch to work on my garden, and I've been doing a lot of planning, and I thought I would just show you some of the tools that I use and some of the things that I do in planning my garden. And I normally start it honestly right after Christmas because I am just kind of ready for I'm ready for spring like most people are, and I'm just itching to get stuff out in the garden and just experience summer and the grow season. It's just one of my favorite things. So what I'm going to start with is I did a video the other day, a dinner video, and I had harvested some butternut squash in the fall. It's January and we still have about 4 or 5 left. I only grow like one plant because it's just my husband and I, so we really don't need a whole lot. We have one in the freezer. I had one just like the tail end kind of started to kind of turn a little bit, so I cut that off and stuck it in the freezer. So I'll pull that out probably the next time I want to do something with butternut squash. Then I think I've got 4 or 5 in storage. So that'll be plenty for us to get us through, because although we like butternut squash, one of the reasons I grow it is just so we can have a fresh vegetable in the wintertime. It's really not my favorite vegetable. I like it. I like to roast it in the oven, and then I've got a really good sausage and butternut squash soup that I make in cans so that we have that. So it's kind of a good staple to have around because it doesn't ever go bad. Now, what I did was when I made dinner the other night, I actually pulled all the seeds out and I got just a ton of seeds. They feel a little light to me. So, but they're dry. They're completely dry. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do a couple things. The first thing I thought I would do is I was going to get my seed box out here and look at my squash. I was going to pull out. This is the butternut squash that I actually grew. It's just burpee winter squash, Waltham butternut. And I want to compare the seed that is in here with the seed that I got out of my plant to see if it's similar. And it's really not. It's not similar at all. This seed feels like there's a seed in it, and this does not feel like there's a seed in it. So what I am going to do is now there's another one here, but I think Burpee is the one that I actually planted because that's what I had in stock. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I am going to save somewhere in here. I thought I had some envelopes. Yes, right here. I'm just going to save these seeds, and I think what I'll try to do is when I go to plant some seeds, and I plant some seeds in trays in about March, I'm going to try a couple to see if it germinates, because otherwise I'm just not really sure it will, and I don't want to count on these seeds because I am planning on doing butternut squash next year. And again, doing butternut squash because it is just great to have a fresh vegetable in the wintertime. You could do winter squash, and also cabbage is a really good one that we'll keep so that you have some, or pumpkins, which is a winter squash, so that you have some kind of fresh vegetable in the wintertime, especially if you're not one that wants to go to the grocery store. And I'm very adamant about, I'm trying everything I can not to go to the grocery store. I'm either growing my food, buying from a local farmer, or buying in bulk from Azure Standard. The only thing I buy at the grocery store currently is milk to make yogurt and eggs. That is all I am buying at the grocery store. Everything else comes from Azure in big quantities. So if I need something in particular, like if I need like a seasoning of some sort, I will buy it in bulk. I don't buy it at the grocery store, and then I put it in my own jars here at home. So that's how I save money, and it's also just, I feel like I'm getting a better product. I don't really love the brands at my local grocery stores, and also I feel like the prices at the grocery stores are so inflated that the per ounce price is way more than what you can buy when you buy bulk. So I am not a big grocery store person anymore. I used to love the grocery store, but I really don't anymore. So, so this is just going to be a good experiment to see if this actually works, because I really wanted to get better at seed saving, and I have not done a ton of that. I've done some, but not a lot. So I don't have a marker right here. So in a little bit, I'll mark these up, and I'm going to put on there to test the seeds first, and then I'll stick them in my little container. So while we're on seeds, let me talk to you about my great little container here. There's lots of different ways that you can do this, but I have a seed library that I keep, and I basically buy seeds every year, and then I work backwards using my seeds. So if I've got a couple different winter squash seeds in here, which I do, I just want to make sure that I've got seeds in case something like, the 2020 disaster happens again, which it is an election year, so who knows what might happen. I want to make sure I've got the seeds that I need for my garden moving forward. So what I'll do is I'll just actually look and see when the seeds expire. And honestly, even though the seeds expire then, or they're packed at that point, they're packed because they're fresh that year, I still use them. So if I have a 2021 and a 2023, I use the 2021 first, and just work backwards that way. But that way I always have at least a packet of fresh seeds every year. So I pretty much buy seeds every year, but I'm making sure that I always have 2 packs of everything. Specifically, if you're looking at butternut squash, it only takes like 1 to 2 seeds per plant. So it takes a long time for me to go through one of these seed packets because it's just 2 of us, and I only typically grow 1 or 2 plants in my garden, and that's plenty for us for the season. So, so the great thing is you keeping a seed library is really great. I have flowers in here. I don't have very many flowers, but I normally have the flowers that are good to keep pests away from your, pest away from your plants in the garden that deter those pests. So I actually do have those types of flowers. And then I have herbs. I have a container for lettuce, a container for herbs, one for beans, a tomato. I've got my 2024, which is everything that's in here is going into my garden. So I pulled everything out that I wanted to put in my garden to make sure that I had all the seeds, and all the seeds that I am planting this year are in this bin right here. And whoops, and you can see there's a lot of seeds. Now, when I'm done here, I will actually take these and refile them back into my seed catalog. But I wanted to make sure that I had everything that I needed moving forward, because when March comes, I'm planning on starting my seeds. I have a grow station out in my garage, and I'm planning on starting my seeds at that time. So now we've talked about cataloging your seeds and how important that is. And in my opinion, it's just as important as having food in your cupboard. It is food security, because you've got seeds that you can plant in any kind of situation. So if there is something that happens, or somebody loses their job in your home, it is really kind of like a little bit of an emergency fund. I feel like food security in our home is like a second emergency fund on top of our savings. We have a savings emergency fund, and then I have a food emergency fund. I also have a seed emergency fund. So I just really feel like that is important, and that's my 2 cents on that. So, so I started to keep like a catalog here of how much I had and how much I needed, and it's worked some. I need to refine this a little bit better. It actually is almost better for me just to go through these myself. I do have some seeds that are coming from an heirloom seed company, and I've got several of those coming in. Then also I just ordered from MI Gardener. I ordered some carrots, and I can't recall what else I ordered from them, but I just got some purple carrots from them that looked phenomenal. So I want to say that maybe I got a different squash or something, but I can't recall. But I actually am really particular anymore about who I order my seeds from. I don't really like to go down the street and buy burpee seeds. I just don't, because they're okay. I think they're fine, but I think there are some really good seed companies and some small companies that I'd like to support as well. It's like supporting your local farmers. So that's where I buy my seeds most of the time. So, and this little dandy thing I just got off Amazon. It's just a little suitcase, little type deal. So it's just a great little thing that I can actually keep out on my grow station, and I can refer to it often if I need to. So the next thing I want to talk about is planning your garden. So I use the Vegetable Gardener's Bible. I've had this book for several years, and it is just a great resource, in my opinion, if you're starting gardening. You don't know much about gardening. This guy, his name is Edward Smith. I think this book was probably published a really long time ago. It kind of looks like it. This was edited in 2000, but it looks like I can't find the first date it was published. So I'm not really sure when the first date it was published, but it was actually 2009, and then it was updated again in 2000. So, or it was no, back up. It was written in 2000, and then first published in 2000, and then it was updated in 2009. So, I mean, it's 2024. It's an old book, but it's got this on page 50 and 51. It's got this great table of garden adversaries and friends. So, for instance, if you're wanting to know if you can plant garlic and potatoes together, you can actually go down and look at potatoes, and it will tell you what things you cannot and can and cannot grow next to each other. And in doing this, it is like you're also like playing Tetris with your garden plan sometimes, because you're trying to put everything, it's like a puzzle trying to put it all together. But it's pretty important because sometimes there are nutrients in the soil, and if you grow two things next to each other that shouldn't be grown next to each other, like here's a perfect example: bush beans and carrots don't go well together, and it could be for lots of reasons. It probably tells you in this book, but I haven't really experimented that much with it. Really, I just know that those are two things I can't grow together. So my carrots actually are not in the same garden as my beans. My carrots are I put my carrots in my garlic garden. When my garlic comes out, I put my carrots in. So I do that succession planting throughout the summer as well. So normally we have a crop in the early summer and a crop in late summer to fall. So I do that a lot because I'm trying to get the most out of my gardens. My gardens I have 3 raised beds right now. They are 3 foot. I have one that's 3 by 12 foot, and I have 2 that are 5 by 12. So they're sizable gardens, and they're perfect for the 2 of us, but they're not huge by any means. And so I try to get the most I can out of that garden. And the way to do that is to do some succession planting. Succession planting is when you plant something, and then when it comes out of the ground, you put something else in its place. And typically when something comes out, well, a lot of times you can get something out in June, July, or August. Like for instance, my garlic is in right now. I did winter garlic. The garlic will come out in July, most likely, possibly the end of June, but probably more like the first 2 weeks in July. Well, you still have all of August, all of September. Here where I live, we have at least 90 days to grow another plant, if not more. So last year what I did is when the garlic came out, I put carrots in its place, and then I did get carrots. I did the carrots a little bit later, or I pulled them. Really what happened was I pulled them too early. I should have let them go longer, and I could have had bigger carrots, but I did get carrots was what happened. So this year my plan is to put carrots and sweet potatoes in as soon as the garlic comes out. And I'm going to do you can buy a shorter season sweet potato, and I'm going to do that and carrots in place of the garlic so that I have a fall crop. That's my plan. So, okay. So the other thing about this book is that not after you do that, you can actually go to look up like carrots. It will tell you how deep and how wide. And he's all about raised gardens, deep, planting your plants deep and planting them far apart so they have more room to grow. And you get a lot more production that way. He's great about talking about different structures, about different pests, how to get rid of the pest, how to naturally get rid of the pest. If you are starting to garden, and I'm not getting paid by this guy at all, I just think this book is phenomenal. It is literally the book that I use every single year, and I use it throughout the year. I use it when I'm planting my garden, and I use it when I'm harvesting, because I will refer back to this book. Matter of fact, this book sits on my table, my coffee table, and hardly ever goes back on the bookshelf because I use it so often. So, but it's called The Vegetables. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it or if it'll be flipped. I'm not really sure, but it's the Vegetable Gardener's Bible, and it is Edward C. Smith. So great book. It is also, just so you know, it is 340 some pages. So it's a good size book. All right. The next thing I want to talk to you about is the actual planning of the garden. So I have lots of different things here, but one of the things that I have done is here's a blank one because I make copies of this, so I have this every year. I just printed some graph paper off the computer offline, just found some offline, and then with a Sharpie, I actually draw out each of my gardens and where they're located. And so this is exactly what it looks like. This is against my house. I've got a garden here and a garden that goes this way. I also should mention that I have not sketched this out yet, but I have a herb garden that goes along our patio, and we have a fire pit ring. I'm actually planning on, it's a circle like patio out there, and I only have grass growing around part of it right now, and I'm going to extend that herb garden all the way around that this year so that all the herbs can actually be planted there instead of in this garden, these three gardens. So I have a better chance of getting more in this garden. So I should rephrase that. There's a few herbs I'm going to put in this garden only because they're herbs that deter pests. And I read that in Ed's book, and I'm going to plant some things like basil is really good near tomatoes because it keeps that red-horned caterpillar looking thing. I can't remember what it's called. Red-horned tobacco. It's like a tobacco worm. That's what it is. It's a tobacco worm. Sorry, it's a tobacco worm, but it actually defers that, or deters that, rather, not defers, deters that. And so I am going to put basil in front of the tomatoes for that. But anyway, so I actually have several of these printed out. I've already redone my garden several times this year, but then I'll sketch out exactly everything that I'm going to do. So when the garlic garden is up next to the house, I have redone this, I don't know how many times, because I'm trying to decide exactly how to get the most out of my garden this year. And I'm planning on going more vertical this year, which will get me more, I think. We last year grew pole beans, and they did really great. And we did it in a teepee. We did 2 teepees out here, but it took up so much room in the garden that this year what we're going to do is we're going to do a trellis from this garden to this garden. So we'll have a row of green beans on right here along this edge and right here along this edge, and then it'll grow over the trellis. So I'm planning on doing that, and then I'm going to put a trellis down the middle of the 2 large gardens, and I'm going to go vertical with my tomatoes, my cucumbers, and probably going to try my peppers that way. I think that you can do that. I don't know that it's going to be necessary, but I am going to try to do that. So anyway, sketching out your garden, I think it's really important, because if you just go out there and start throwing things in the ground, I hear people all the time. I have friends, or even I'm a nurse, and I have some patients that'll say, I try to grow this or that, and it didn't work out. And when I come to find out, when you start talking to them, they didn't put any compost in their garden. They just planted it right into the ground. They didn't check their soil. Maybe the temperature wasn't right. They planted their carrots next to something that shouldn't have been, next to their bush beans or whatever. So they didn't really have any plan in place. And having a plan in place is going to make sure you have the best and most successful garden. In turn, we'll actually get food in your cabinet. And why do all that hard work? Why spend all that money and all that time all summer long if you're going to end up with no food? So make sure that you're actually planning that out and really understanding what it is that you need to be doing and where everything needs to go. And it's not too late to start. We actually did not even put our third garden in until May of last year, and it did great. We put our compost in, and it did great last season, and so it'll do even better this season because I'm hoping I'll have more worms in there and it'll do better. So, and then the last thing I want to talk to you about is planting your seeds. Now, I have in the past have used those little like pea pod looking things. You put a seed, you put them in water and they expand, and they have like a little sac on the outside of it, and then they germinate, and then sometimes I would transplant them into a bigger block of soil. I have a ton of those out there. I have some that I might use for testing of other things, but this year I'm doing something different and I'm excited about it. I bought a soil block. So I'm going to pull it out here. I've not even pulled it out yet. I bought a soil block, and it looks like I probably have to put something together, but yeah, you do. But I'll basically show you the gist of it. So a soil block, and I'll probably do a video closer like in March when I start to do this so you can see what this is like. But basically what a soil block does is that it creates, you can see these square blocks. It creates square blocks of soil that you can just put into a plastic tray. And I have a ton of those plastic trays out there that these will fit into. And I purchased, I think these were a 2-inch by 2-inch. You can get a 4-inch, a 2-inch. I think you maybe can get a 3-inch. You can get really small ones too. But I feel like a 2-inch was going to be pretty good for what I needed. And basically, I'm going to get 8 soil blocks out of this, and then it pokes a little hole in the middle for you to put your seed in. So I'm excited about that because it is eventually going to be less waste, because I'm not going to have like plastic pots that I'm going to have to plant my stuff in. Basically, my pot is going to be this little soil block that's going to sit into a big tray. And then when it's time to plant, I'll be able just to pull that out of the tray and put it in the ground. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this little tutorial on how I plan my garden and the things that I'm doing right now in January to prepare for the upcoming season. And I will maybe come back to you before then, but probably with gardening stuff might not come back until March or so. The first couple weeks of March, I'm planning on starting my seed starts, and I'm pretty set on what I'm going to be planting right now, but that seems to change from day to day. The other advice I would give to you as well is don't choose something that's easy to grow, choose something you're going to eat. So beets are an easy crop to grow, and they're fun to grow. And I've grown them 3 years in a row, but honestly, I don't like beets. And so they're not in my garden plan this year. If you don't like squash, is pretty easy to grow. It pretty much takes off as long as you don't have a squash bug problem. Tomatoes aren't really too hard to grow, but if you don't eat any of those foods, what good does it do for you to even try those things? So the last 2 years, I actually have tried Brussels sprouts, and Brussels sprouts have taken an enormous amount of space in my garden, and I was unsuccessful both years. I love Brussels sprouts, but I've just not been successful with them. I don't really know if it's our climate. I don't know if it's the soil. I don't really know what it is, but I've not been able to grow them. And I can grow a lot of things in my garden. I really feel like I have a green thumb, and I'm pretty good at gardening, but I just cannot seem to get through a season without my Brussels sprouts rotting, that is. So I'm not doing Brussels sprouts again. It takes up too much room in my garden, and it really was just very frustrating for me because I ended up with no vegetable, no fruit off that plant. And then I just wasted all that space that I could have grown something else. So I'm going to be buying mine from either a local farmer or possibly from Azure Standard. I did see that they actually sell them fresh as well. That's probably what I'm going to do moving forward. But we hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe so that you don't miss any of our content. And we hope you're having a great day. Bye.